Hey guys, so let's talk about what you can expect in your first year working as an accountant, because many of you right now are watching my videos and you're probably doing it as part of your research to actually find out what a career in accountancy might be like for you. And I know that this is a question I've previously been asked, so I thought I would go down memory lane, however many years ago that was for me, and share with you my experience of what it was like in my first year as an accountant, specifically as an accountant in the UK. Okay, so if you are on that journey, or if you're looking to get your first role as an accountant and you just want to know what sort of things you should expect and just some tips from someone who has been there, then do make sure you watch this video till the very end. And if this is your first time here, my name is Tess and I'm a UK accountant, and on this channel I share useful tips to help those who are looking to actually get a job as an accountant here in the UK and start their journey in accountancy. So if any of those things appeal to you, then do make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and make sure you turn on your notification bells. So let's get started then. I think the very first thing you should expect is having a combination of different tasks that are assigned to you. And what you'll find is that a lot of these tasks are very, basic. If I'm being very honest, they're designed to help you get an understanding of the foundation of accountancy. So a lot of it might be, handling petty cash, doing things that involve, journal entries, debits and credits, etc. Whilst they seem basic, quote unquote, it's very important because, of course, these are things that is going to help you actually build your foundation, your understanding of what accountancy ultimately is. So in many ways, I think the first year as an accountant is actually very, very, very important. It's a year that personally for me, I will never get back. But I think that if this is your first time, it's important to actually bear this in mind. You're not going to get it back. And you want to use this opportunity to soak in as much knowledge as possible. I know I heard that statement years ago and I didn't really understand or value it up until now, but you really want to take advantage of making sure that whatever task you're given, you're taking the opportunity to really learn and understand what that task is about. More importantly, why are you doing that task? What's the end goal? And many people miss out on this because when it comes to getting senior roles, you are going to have to understand why certain things are being done. It's not just about doing the operational things and just kind of functionally getting things done. It's also understanding why, as a company, as a business, we need to do those things. What's the ending outcome, what's the goal, and what happens if those things are not done. So this is going to be your prime opportunity to really be engaged, be focused on the task that you're being assigned to, however basic you think it actually is. Okay, the next point is going to be around asking a lot of questions. Take the opportunity to ask a lot of questions. In your first year as an accountant, you will get the opportunity, okay? People will not look at you as though, oh, why is he or she asking these questions? They are going to be much more patient with you because they know that it is your first year, your entry level, and you're still basically, a junior in this game. So it's very important that you take that opportunity to ask lots and lots and lots of questions, because what I found is many of the things that I learned in my first year, I am still referring back to them now, almost a decade later or a decade after, which is crazy when I think about it sometimes, but it is very, very important that you take as much opportunity to build that foundation, understand why you're doing what you're doing, okay? Another thing I want to mention is the fact that even though you are being given a lot of tasks, varied tasks, One thing I will say that happened in my case, and I will strongly urge you to try and make sure that this is the same in your case, is the fact that a lot of the tasks I was given in my first year ultimately aligned to helping me, on my studies in my accountancy qualification. So for instance, if the exams that I was going to sit at the end of a particular season, maybe say December exams, were going to be the financial accounting and management accounting papers, then if there were particular concepts in those papers that I felt I needed practical experience on to really help me translate that theoretically, then I would sit and work with my manager. I mean, your manager should probably be doing this with you anyway, but if they're not, I would really, really urge you to try and make sure that this is the case. For instance, it would be that I would tell my manager that, I really want to get a better understanding of journaling, of journal entries, and can she assign me a task that would involve this? And this way, I found that it made the translation of the theoretical into the practical much more easy. And it will also obviously help when it comes to sitting the exams. So no opportunity is lost, and you have to capitalize on every opportunity that you find, okay? So this is your time, really, I would say, as a first-year accountant to explore as much of the organization as you can and use it to your advantage to learn and build your knowledge. You're really going to soak up as much as possible, and I would say that it is for the best outcome overall, okay? Now, the next thing you can expect in your first year is that you might find that you have quite a bit of time, okay? Sometimes, not all the time, but you'll find that you have quite a bit of time on your hands on certain occasions, namely because you don't have line management responsibility, and maybe you are just pretty efficient and productive, as many of the tasks can be quite repetitive anyway. Now, what I will say is, when you're in your first year and you find that this is the case, you want to make sure that you're starting to think about what kind of learning and courses, development courses that you can take on. This is the best time to do it, because you will not get that free time later on as you progress. I'm telling you that now, because as you progress, you are going to get, more workload, more responsibility, and, you're probably going to have line management responsibility as well. It's going to be much more difficult for you to have that time to really think about, okay, what sort of development courses, what sort of skills can I actually take time out of my working day to do, okay? So one of the things I did was, back when I was training, in my very early years, particularly in my first year, was I was actually looking for any course that I could take that would help me in my future career. And one of the courses I took then was the Prince 2 Foundation, because I knew that ultimately I wanted to get involved in projects eventually, okay? So for me, I used that spare time to my advantage, because as you progress, like I said before, you might find that you have very little time to even think about developmental courses, let alone being able to attend them. Now, the next thing you probably should expect in your first year is building relationships, okay? Now, this one is probably not going to, sit well with so many people, depending on what kind of person you are. If you're an introverted person like me to an extent, then maybe you will find that this scenario will force you to come out of your shell a bit. If you're an extrovert, then this will probably come second nature to you, I guess. But in your first year, it's really going to be important. One, for the fact that you are going to find that working in finance requires you to work with a variety of different stakeholders. And that no doubt means that you have to get good at building relationships. And one of the ways you can do this, or start to practice doing this, is in your first year. I will say that You should aim to attend lots and lots of networking events, get to know people, get comfortable with building relationships, managing conflicts where it applies, but namely building relationships, getting into that habit. And this is something that, again, I did a lot in my first year, getting exposed to as many people within the organization, and even like just kind of across the finance community. Really, it doesn't necessarily have to be that you only go to networking events within your organization. You can also go to networking events that are arranged by, say, ACCA, Kaplan, SIPFA, whoever your accounting body is. They would also tend to have annual or quarterly finance events that you should be aiming to attend, because remember, like I said before, you will not get that time again. So it's about thinking on your feet, what can I do now in the foundation years of my career that will help me become a much better accountant, become someone who has a lot of relationships, who knows a lot of influential people. And you'll find that using this, getting into the habit of building good relationships, particularly via networking, will help, as you progress up the ladder. In many instances, it's not really about what you know, it's about who you know. So this is important. Before I forget, another thing you probably want to think about when it comes to your first year as an accountant is going to be around, managing the busy season, particularly when it comes to your work schedule. Now, many people, when they sign up for having a career in accountancy, they don't quite expect how busy the season can get. And by season, I mean particularly around the year-end period. Anyone who's worked as an accountant before or in finance will probably relate to what I'm saying. Year-end can be, or probably is, one of the worst seasons as an accountant, probably followed by, budget setting, which usually happens around kind of September, October time, depending on what industry you're working in. But you want to be prepared for how you are going to manage that business season with your schedule, particularly your study schedule. If you're someone who is still studying, in most cases, most people are probably still studying at this point, in their first year as an accountant. So be prepared for that. Have a clear schedule in place, because what I will say is it's not going to get easier. So if you can master a way of managing your work schedule, i.e., around that busy time, particularly with your study schedule, then you will find that as you progress in your academics, i.e., doing your accounting qualification, you will be able to not just manage the increasing responsibilities that you're getting at work, but you will also be able to maintain your focus on your studies, both of which are going to be very, very important. And I think this is something that many people don't quite foresee, because many of the time, when it comes to working and studying at the same time, which is something the vast majority of those who are training to be accountants will inevitably have to do at some stage of their career, you have to be prepared for the fact that as you're progressing in work, most likely you're also progressing in the difficulties of the exams that you're having to sit at the same time. So this can be something that many people find challenging, and they just don't know how to balance the two. So what I will say is, for me personally, this is what worked for me. It might not work for you, but for me personally, I got into the routine of having a very, very fixed, almost a rigid schedule, which was the fact that I would always study before I went to work. So that unfortunately meant I was up quite early. So I would study for maybe about an hour thereabouts, and then get ready, go to work. And then during my lunch breaks, I would kind of do a quick recap of what I'd studied in the morning. And then after work, I would basically do another 1 hour or so session. So it meant that I was able to kind of, study and work round the clock, so to speak. It's not the easiest to do, but especially when you're coming up to your exams, you do have to make sure that you are firm and diligent with it. Because again, for those of you who your organization is sponsoring your qualification, many a times your organization will not pay if you fail your exams the first time. Okay, they won't pay for you to do a reset. You will have to pay that out of pocket yourself. And another thing is, if you're on a training contract, which for most people they are able to secure, what happens is if you fail, I think twice in a session, or so depending on the organization, but I know that in my case, if you failed twice, okay, if you failed the same exam twice, then you were out of the contract, basically. Okay, so it is very, very important to make sure that when you are on a training contract and from your first year, really, you want to make sure that you get into the habit of how you're going to manage your workload with the hectic study session that you're also going to have to combine that with. So really then, your first year in accounting is really the building block that will define a lot of where you then go on to in your career as an accountant. So it is very important for you to think ahead as to how you're going to make the best of that year. There's going to be a lot of expectations, I think anyway, from your managers, from senior managers, to see that you are actually taking advantage of that first year. You're asking questions, you're diligent, in your work, and you're basically showing good work attitude towards taking on the tasks that they give you and learning from that. I think that your first year is the year that you should be looking to really actually make a very, very good impression. A lot of people who make excellent first impressions in their first years will find that by the time they are coming towards the end of their qualification, particularly if they're still in the same organization, it makes it so much easier for them to, secure a role in that organization. Because like I mentioned before, it's not necessarily always what you know, it's also who you know. But if you are not showing to these managers in your organizations or directors, etc., that you are someone who is ambitious, you're someone who really picks things, and learns on the go, and you're someone who is obviously dedicated to your career as an accountant in the future, then how are they going to see this? So you don't want that opportunity to be missed. You want to make sure that at every turn you are making sure that people can see that you are present, networking opportunities, making sure that you are in meetings that are important. You might not understand what those meetings are about. And in fact, I don't think anyone's expecting you to understand what those meetings are about. If I'm very honest, they probably aren't. But the fact that you are in those meetings, for you, it is going to be that you're using those meetings as an opportunity to learn more about how the organization's finance function runs. So for me, I used to be in a lot of very random, sometimes board meetings, very, very senior meetings in my first year. But as much as I didn't understand things, it gave me the opportunity to ask lots of questions. And from asking lots of questions, that way you're able to build your understanding when it comes to you actually then thinking about, okay, what do I want to do in my career, So really, really take the time to network, build relationships. Hopefully this video gave you an idea of what you can expect in your first year as an accountant. Let me know down in the comments below what other experiences you've had if you have been working as an accountant for a number of years now. Share some insights as to what your first year as an accountant was. And if you have any other questions about accounting in the UK, then simply drop them down in the comments below, or you can contact me using the links in the description box below if you're interested in booking a session with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.